What are the downsides of being the responsible one in the family? My parents decided I would be the full-time caretaker for both my grandmother with dementia and my 9-year-old brother on a ventilator. I was 12 when they handed me the medical power of attorney papers and said this was why they had an eldest daughter. Mom and dad were both surgeons at the top hospital in the state. They explained that their careers saved lives and they couldn't risk taking time off. Dad actually said the words, "We make too much money to quit," while adjusting his Rolex. Mom nodded and added that family takes care of family. She said it like she was doing something noble instead of abandoning her sick mother and disabled son. Grandma had been diagnosed with aggressive dementia 6 months earlier. She went from forgetting names to not recognizing faces to becoming violent when confused. My little brother Noah had muscular dystrophy and needed a ventilator to breathe. He also had a feeding tube and required specialized equipment that beeped and alarmed throughout the night. Our house was this massive Victorian mansion my parents bought to impress their doctor friends. 3 stories with endless rooms that felt more like a medical facility than a home once they moved in all of Noah's equipment. They set up Grandma in the room next to his so I could monitor both at once. The day they officially handed over responsibility was burned into my memory. Mom pulled out a binder thicker than my textbooks and started flipping through medical charts. I had to record vitals every hour for both of them. Blood pressure and oxygen levels and medication schedules and feeding times. Dad showed me videos on YouTube about changing ventilator tubes and managing dementia outbursts. If either of them dies under your care, you'll be charged with manslaughter, Dad said while installing security cameras in every room. These are for safety monitoring, but I knew they were really to make sure I never left my post. Life became a nightmare cycle of medical emergencies. Grandma would mistake me for my dead aunt and grab my wrists hard enough to leave bruises. She'd scream that I was trying to poison her when I brought her pills. Once she threw her dinner plate at my head because she thought I was a burglar. Meanwhile, Noah's ventilator would start shrieking its alarm, and I'd have to leave her mid-meltdown to adjust his tubes or suction his airways. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours straight in 3 years. Teachers stopped asking why I fell asleep in class. My friends stopped inviting me places because I always had to cancel. One time, Grandma escaped the house while I was changing Noah's feeding tube. I had to wheel him outside in the freezing cold with all his equipment because I couldn't leave him alone. We found her trying to break into a neighbor's car because she thought it was 1987 and she was late for work. Noah broke my heart the most. He'd cry and beg me not to leave when I had to use the bathroom. His eyes would fill with tears and he'd type on his communication device, "Please don't go." He was terrified that his ventilator would fail and no one would hear the alarm. He wasn't wrong to be scared. The machines were old and my parents refused to upgrade them. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. Grandma was having her worst episode yet. She thought I was holding her prisoner and attacked me with her walker. I was trying to calm her down when Noah's ventilator started making a grinding noise I'd never heard before. The alarm was different too, urgent and sharp. His oxygen levels were dropping fast and his lips were turning blue. I ran to him and checked all the connections, but nothing worked. Grandma followed me, still swinging the walker and screaming. Noah's eyes were huge with panic as he struggled to breathe. His little hands clutched at his throat. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 for the first time in 3 years. The paramedics found me doing manual ventilation on Noah while Grandma hit my back with her fists. When they loaded them both into ambulances, I told them everything. How I'd been their only caregiver since I was 12. How my parents were in Switzerland at a medical conference. How I hadn't been to school in a week. The hospital social worker sat with me while I slept 16 straight hours in the family lounge. When I woke up, she had questions. So many questions. I showed her the binder and the medical power of attorney and the security footage of me managing everything alone. She made phone calls with her lips pressed in a thin line. My parents flew back immediately and arrived at the hospital playing the perfect concerned family. Mom actually had tears in her eyes as she told the social worker I must have dismissed the home health aides they'd hired. Dad produced paperwork showing round-the-clock caregivers who mysteriously never appeared on the security cameras. They suggested I'd been hiding them away because I was possessive of Noah and Grandma. The social worker separated us for interviews. My parents painted a picture of a troubled teen who wanted attention. They showed edited security footage of me being rough with Grandma during her violent episodes. They pointed out my failing grades and social isolation as evidence of mental illness. I sat in that small interview room watching my parents spin their web of lies. Mom actually told them she was worried about my attachment to Noah. She said I seemed to enjoy the medical emergencies. Dad mentioned finding medical websites in my search history. They exchanged concerned looks and whispered about getting me help. Then Dad leaned forward and said the words that made my blood freeze. "We think she might have been making them sicker. For attention. You know, like that syndrome. What's it called, honey?" Mom dabbed at her eyes. "We need to contact CPS claiming protagonist has Munchausen by proxy." Full story on channel and linked below.